Right now, joining me, my friend from NFL Game Day Morning and Westwood One Radio, where he calls only the biggest events, including the Monday Nighter of Super Wildcard Weekend. That's right. Hall of Fame great Kurt Warner back here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Kurt would take us to
Hey,
the
buddy,
party.
how are you?
What's going on, Kurt? How you doing?
Kurt, can we come to the party with you?
Yeah. Kurt, can we be your plus three?
What are you guys arguing about? I got in on the tail end. What's the issue here?
You know,
Gosh.
excuse me.
He's rude, Kurt.
Kurt Warner's real estate is valuable. I'm not gonna gum up our real estate with your nonsense.
I don't think
Just because I got invited to the Fanatics Super Bowl party, and I got invited to the Fanatics Super Bowl party, and I announced on the air that I was RSVPing yes on live, and they got on live TV, and they got
He's
very
big
upset.
dogging us, Kurt.
Yeah.
And your buddies aren't excited for you?
Thank you.
You got invited to the party?
No,
and
absolutely
you get a chance
not.
to go?
Not at all.
No?
No.
We want to go,
Only
Kurt.
you guys get to go with them?
No,
we don't.
No, they do not.
And he was very happy to point that out, Kurt, that we
do
don't
not.
get to go with him.
Right.
That was the problem.
He was being rude,
He
Kurt.
pointed that out. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank
I
you.
see
He's
both
just-
sides. I see both sides.
Chris is just upset because I seat shamed him from my first row seat about 9 years ago on the plane.
Yes.
You know, and say he's still,
Right. He's sitting 1A, and you think
he's
you're
still
better
very
than
upset
that.
about
Then Kurt, he tried to congratulate me on the Patriots win yesterday. Not happy about it.
Yeah, that's the first question. How great did Joe Milton look, Kurt? No, okay.
See, that's just wrong, Rich.
Hey,
He
stop.
looked good.
He did,
He
right?
actually looked good.
I
He
know.
did look good. I mean, I was impressed. I really was.
You should be.
He looked good.
So let's dive into last night's game first, the final game of the regular season. The narrative, as you know, it's going to be that Sam Darnold regressed to some form of a mean despite having won 14 of his previous 16 starts. What did you see about what the Lions did that might have just been a one-off or anything that you saw Sam Darnold do that might concern you, Kurt?
Well, I mean, I think the first problem we have is just putting this all on Sam Darnold. Is they got manhandled, the Vikings offensively. I mean, the receivers were locked down. There wasn't a lot of separation. You know, I wasn't a fan of some of the play calling, even though I think Kevin O'Connell always does a great job. But I think at times it fed into what the Lions were doing, playing, press man and things they were doing in the red zone. But, I mean, I thought it was just a great performance by the Detroit defense more than this was just an awful performance by Sam Darnold that was just missing guys all over the place. I don't think that was the case. And so I looked at this as a Minnesota Vikings offense issue where they got dominated up front. They got dominated on the back end. Sam didn't play great, but I don't think there was a lot of easy opportunities out there either that most guys in the league or even the better quarterbacks in the league are going into that situation and having a great game with what Detroit did to him. So to me, I'm tipping my hat more to Detroit than I'm looking at Sam Darnold or the Minnesota Vikings and saying, oh man, move on to next year because you guys aren't good enough. I don't think that was the case.
I mean, and to a man, all of us sitting on the set of NFL Game Day Morning on Sunday, I even verbalized it to point blank to you and Gerald and Mooch, like, hey, so is the narrative that the Lions are going to have to win every game 40-30 and make a defensive stop here or there, and they hold the Vikings to the season low 9 points using the guys that they have, and it's kind of scary for the rest of the NFC, I'd imagine, with what we saw on Sunday night. Kurt?
No doubt. I mean, I thought they won the trenches on both sides, and that to me is for defenses, that's really where it starts, right? It doesn't really matter how good your back end is. If your front end can't win and can't, win that battle, whether it's in the run game or even getting pressure on a quarterback, you're going to struggle on the back end. And that to me was what was so impressive is I thought the front of the Detroit Lions, we've talked about injuries there and obviously Aiden Hutchinson, you're seeing him, all of that stuff. They dominated in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that to me, when I look at the NFC, I say to myself, is the team that can do that is going to be the team, in my opinion, that's going to come out of the NFC. And so I think we look at Philly and we look at Detroit and say those are the two best teams in terms of controlling the line of scrimmage. And then the explosiveness of the Lions on top of that. So, yeah, I think seeing that game, knowing, kind of where Detroit is and watching them dominate the Vikings like they did, I think you're right. I think everybody in the NFC is like, oh, we thought maybe they were going to be knocked back and we were going to be kind of in the mix. Lions to me are the team to beat right now because of the way they showed up physically and won that game last night.
Is there anything that the Lions may have blueprinted for the Rams? You know, an interesting comment that a live mic picked up when the coaches met at midfield last night. You know, Tirico mentioned it, and I'm sure the Rams will maybe bulletin board it a little bit, saying, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." It was just what two colleagues say one another is just a genial thing, I think, for Dan Campbell to say.
Right.
But that said, is there anything that the Rams could utilize that the Lions did to blueprint it here? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at their defense, you say to yourself, you can look at the scheme. I mean, the scheme is obviously the Rams have the guys up front that can win, can put pressure on a quarterback, can do those things. I really like their front seven. To me, the key in this game was the back end being able to physically attack the receivers of Minnesota and, not give them space and not let them run free in the secondary. And so the question becomes, do the Rams have the secondary players that can play man-to-man, that can get physical with a Justin Jefferson and really mess up that timing to go along with the front being able to get after to Sam Darnold? I'm not sure they have those guys. So it will be interesting to see what their plan is. But I thought Detroit, they've been a man team all year, so they've never shied away from it. They're confident in their man, and that's what they did. They played a lot of man-to-man coverage, and they got up in their face and physically, kind of manhandled those receivers. I'm not sure the Rams can do that, but, that's a blueprint, to make it harder on Sam Darnold, to not let Justin Jefferson just have, free reign with 10 or 15 yards of free space to be able to do what he does. It's just a matter of, and I talk about all the time, right? Matchups become so important come playoff time. And, do you have the right matchup against the opponent that you have to go and do what you think you need to do to beat them? But let's also remember, Rams have already beat them, right? I mean, that was one of the things. The Rams have already beat them this year. It's one of the teams that beat Minnesota. So I don't think they're afraid of this team by any means.
Yeah, they're the only team to hand Minnesota a road loss, and that, interestingly enough, came 5 days after the Lions beat the Vikings for the first time, and now here comes Minnesota to Los Angeles after losing to the Lions once again. We'll see what happens. Kurt Warner calling that game on Westwood One with Kevin Harlan. I'll be doing the studio thing for you as well, Kurt. Hopefully from the booth. I think we're going to work that one out again.
Oh, good.
It's SoFi
It's going to be a
Stadium.
fun one. That's going to be a good one.
No doubt about it. And let's talk about some of the other super wild card weekend matchups. Let's start with the Steelers, the third team in NFL history to come into the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak. What are you seeing out of this offense and where the previous offense has disappeared from? What can you say about it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, we can go all the way back for me is, watching Russell Wilson play in Seattle and how great he was in Seattle, moving to Denver and having to become, or I think he wanted to become, and I think Denver wanted him to become more of a drop back passer, see the field, dissect the defense, get the ball out on time. I think what we saw in that experiment is that's not who Russell Wilson is. That's not his strength. So, okay, now he goes to Pittsburgh. And for a while, it looks really, really good in Pittsburgh. But if you go back and dissect what he was doing most of the time offensively in Pittsburgh when they were having success, it was more about checkdowns and big plays. Checkdowns and big plays. And so the key for their offense is about getting those big plays. Now, they went through a stretch here without George Pickens, who's their biggest playmaker down the field. But I think when you see this offense without those big plays, that's what we've seen over the last 4 weeks. We've seen a team that struggles to move the football. If you can really pin your ears back and go after the run game and you say, who's going to beat us on the outside? How are you going to beat us on the outside? Because Russell's forte is not, let's just have a really good intermediate passing game and we'll just boom, 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 and I'll pick you apart and I'll see that's not who he is. And so they're so built on getting that big play and shortening drives for themselves that when they don't have them, I don't know what they can really hang their hat on. And I don't know how they hold up against the best teams in the league. Now, they played Cincinnati earlier in the year and scored 44 points. And you saw Russell Wilson getting big play after big play after big play. but that was really the only game that I've seen where they've really been able to establish, a consistent passing game all year long. And a lot of them, again, were big plays. It wasn't about, Russell Wilson dissecting another team. And so that, to me, is going to be paramount against, Baltimore. Is don't give up the big play. Force the Steelers to work the field. Force Russell Wilson to make play after play, read after read, right decision after right decision to beat you, because, they just haven't done it very well. And again, not just on Russell. I don't know if they've got like a George Pickens. As good as he is in the big play area in the 50-50 ball, he's not the most consistent route runner. And he's not the most consistent at being in the right spot, or we saw last week, making every catch that he needs to make in other areas. And so the offense as a whole, I don't think is built on that idea of we're really efficient, we're really pinned down on the details, and we're going to be good no matter what you force us to do. They hang a lot on that big play, and when they don't get it, they really struggle.
Kurt Warner here on the Rich Eisen Show, and the Denver Broncos eviscerated the Chiefs. I chose the Chiefs on game day morning yesterday, thinking, you know what? The Chiefs have still got the backups. Carson Wentz is going to use this moment to put on tape what other people can see to have him become the next Sam Darnold and the next Baker. Maybe he can be, but certainly not based on what we saw. And Bo Nix was just spectacular. He was so very good. What do you see out of this kid that makes you think potentially he can win a playoff game or get the Broncos to where they need to go eventually, if not this year, Kurt?
Bo Nix has played really well. I think sometimes, like yesterday, did so many good things. I think he set a Denver Bronco record for completion percentage. Now, I go back and watch the tape, and, sometimes I roll my eyes a little bit because so many of his throws were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And so I think sometimes we see the stats, and they're not quite indicative of how players are playing. And so what I see with Bo Nix is that they're going to design a pass game that is about getting the ball out of his hands quickly. Sean Payton does a great job of creating a bunch of quick screens or easy RPO reads, get the ball out of his hands, get these completions. And then the second aspect that is really good about Bo Nix is he uses his legs really well. When he doesn't see something open, he doesn't force the ball, he creates. And whether that's buying time with his legs to make throws down the field, which he can do, or whether that's just tucking it and going, he made, 2 or 3, 20-plus yard runs yesterday on top of it. So that's the second element. So they're going to play more small ball than anything and play efficient and try to win the early downs. And that's what Buffalo is going to have to stop. And they're going to have to force him to throw it down the field. But, with all that being said about how they want to play, he can still throw it down the field. Like, I'm not saying, that he can't do that. He made 3 beautiful throws down the field yesterday. It's just not a huge part of their offense. It's more of the changeup, the complementary piece to all this, short, type of stuff that they like to do. But he can throw it down the field, and he can make plays. And so I've been, so impressed with his efficiency of playing the position, of realizing as a rookie, I don't have to do everything. I don't have to throw it down the field all the time. Just play the play. Just play what Coach Payton has given me and be a complementary piece to our defense. And we've got a chance every single time out. And so that, to me, is what I've really liked about Bo Nix and what they've done offensively is they're not asking this rookie quarterback to do everything. They're not putting it in his hands every single time out. Just play the position, and he's playing the position really, really well.
A few minutes left with Kurt Warner here before I send him on the rest of his Monday. Let's talk about some other news that's breaking right now. I'm sure you heard Tyreek Hill basically say he wants out of Miami, that he's done. What do you think's going through Tua's mind right now? If you were him, would you call him up and say what's going on, or what do you think of this, Kurt?
I think you have to look at it 2 ways. The first thing is you hate any of your best players to come out and when things haven't gone well and you didn't make it to the playoffs and say something like that after a game, because everybody's battling and everybody's trying to win and everybody wants to be in the playoffs. So that's kind of disappointing. But I think also if you're Tua, I think part of it you have to understand is the frustration with Tyreek Hill is that Tua hasn't been on the field as much as we need him to be on the field. In critical moments, we have a chance to be in the playoffs, and he doesn't play the last 2 weeks of the year for this football team. Tyreek Hill, just in and of himself, doesn't have the impact or the success in Miami when Tua is not on the field. So I think you have to see that side of it too, and the frustration of any playmaker, especially obviously a wide receiver, when the quarterback is missing a lot of time year after year after year. That's something that I know every wide receiver would take into consideration. Like, man, I can't be my best, and we can't be our best without our quarterback consistently being on the football field. So I think that is a part of what we're seeing with this frustration of Tyreek Hill. I didn't like it after the game, but you have to believe that's a part of it, and wondering, what can we count on with our quarterback in terms of playing and being out on the field with us, year in and year out.
And then last one for you, Kurt, as we are now in the coaching carousel portion of the calendar, and it's going to start spinning maybe more with more coaching news. If the Bears called you up and asked for advice on what do we need in a coach for Caleb Williams, what advice would you give the Bears for a hire for Caleb Williams, Kurt?
Well, I think my advice for any team right off the bat is find a head coach. Find a guy that can lead your organization. That, to me, is where it all starts. Like, would you love to have a guy that can lead your organization and bring an incredible offense and an Andy Reid type guy? Of course you would, because Caleb's your guy and you're going to be attached to him, and you want to bring him along because your organization will go as Caleb Williams goes. And so I definitely think you'd love to have both of those pieces. But I just worry because I've seen too often teams make the mistake of going out and getting, the hot candidate based on what they do on one side of the ball or the other. Because, hey, we want that offense and we want that element, so let's get that guy. But that guy is not the CEO. He's not the leader. He's not the guy that you need to galvanize the troops and build a winning organization. And so that would be my advice to all of these teams. As much as I want to see a different offense for Caleb Williams, and I've been outspoken about that all year long, and some of my frustration of what they've asked him to do and how I think it's hurt him in his rookie year. I think the most important thing is you need stability and a guy that's a known leader that can take over your organization, share his vision, and have a plan to get you to that vision. Is what I would tell any one of these teams, and even specifically the Chicago Bears with where they've been, over the course of the last decade or so, and knowing the pieces that they've got there.
But that said, there's usually a side of the ball that somebody comes from. John Harbaugh is an exception, I guess, because he was a special teams guy. So if the Bears introduce the next head coach and he's a defensive-minded head coach, Bears fans shouldn't go crazy, is what you're saying, Kurt?
I mean, again, I think it kind of depends on who it is.
Right.
If that coach is Mike Vrabel, no, I do not think the Bears fans should go crazy. Like, you got yourself a really good head coach. Now, what do you want from that? Because I think Vrabel kind of comes from that mode of, hey, we want to play really good defense. We don't want to turn the football over so that our offense can be a little bit more conservative, so on and so forth. Well, I mean, you look at Jim Harbaugh. That's basically the way that he's come in to the Chargers and said, hey, I know we've got this, really shiny, talented piece at quarterback, but this is how we're going to win. We're going to play good defense. We're going to run the football, and we're going to dominate in those areas, and we're going to allow our quarterback to be a complementary piece, or when we need him, to shine when we need him. And so, I know we would like to see every one of our young quarterbacks go throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, organizations want to win, and you bring in the guy that can help you win and have a plan to win, even if it may not look one way or another. So again, I think it depends on who it is. If it's a known commodity that is a really good head football coach in the National Football League, and even though he comes from the defensive side, I think the Bears fans should be extremely excited about it. If it's an unknown guy that comes from the defensive side that we don't know if he's going to be a great head coach, then I think any fan base, knowing that you've got Caleb Williams and what you need to do and what you want to build around offensively, may have some questions at that point.
Kurt, thanks again, brother. Love you.
You got it, man.
See you next week. And,
all right.
We're at that time, right? Playoff time. And then you're going to start grinding tape on Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. A lot of teams have already turned their page, and we're at that time of the year. So thanks for the time.
It is. Exciting times ahead. I can't wait for the next few weeks.
All right.
All right, buddy. See you soon.
You got it. At Kurt13Warner. Check him out. And check out QB Confidential on YouTube to get all of his pearls of wisdom. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.